cricket, the traditional game, you wouldn't want too much of that hype. We think of it like American baseball hype. We would not want that.
Oh, they're
music and
they're not as sophisticated over there.
Exactly. We
this
consider
is a gentleman's sport.
Exactly right. We consider that we know what's going on, and everybody knows.
So you don't have cheerleaders?
No, none of that nonsense for a test match. No, that's very un-test match.
No. And I guess nobody's running on the field with fireworks and no.
Oh no, we wouldn't have that nonsense.
Rubbish.
Here's what I thought about this sport before this day. It's a game where guys dress up as if they're about to attend the world's most formal picnic, but end up playing with a bat and a ball instead. Players decked out in all white gear as if they missed the memo that they were gonna get grass stains and not attending a tea party. In this sport, one team tries to hit the ball with a flat bat. Yes, flat, because apparently round bats are too mainstream. They smack the ball and run back and forth between two sticks in the ground. Running in circle is just not how gentlemen do it, I guess. Then there's the bowler. Yes, that is what he's called. Who does this funny run-up as if he's about to launch into space, but instead he throws the ball in the most complicated way possible. And everyone's clapping and cheering for what looks like a misthrow. Oh, and if the ball hits the sticks, it's a big deal. Like celebration time. But if you're like me and knows nothing of this sport, you might just wonder why knocking over some sticks is worth even a high five. The fielders, oh, they're a spectacle. Diving and jumping around, making catches that sometimes look more like accidental dance moves. And they do this for hours and hours. In fact, something called a test game, nobody really knows why, takes 5 days. Yes, days. When I heard this, I was shocked and thought that it must be because it's a sport that was invented before Netflix and they had no idea how to fill their time. But the best part, the breaks, lunch breaks and tea breaks. This game is apparently designed around meal times, because nothing says tough sport like stopping for scones and tea. It's a marathon of formal attire, running for reasons beyond my understanding and celebrating the little things like letting a ball hit your sticks. Today is all about cricket. I'm invited to an important cricket game between Australia and South Africa at a legendary stadium in Sydney, Australia. Let's see if I appreciate the sport more and maybe even understanding a little bit of what it's all about by the end of the day. My name is Palabo and this is the Radio Vagabond. Welcome back to Sydney, Australia.
This is the Radio Vagabond.
As I walk into the Sydney Cricket Grounds, the SCG, it's like stepping into a whole new world. The place is huge and in a big circle, green seats everywhere you look. Jumbo screens so no one misses a thing, showing close-ups and replays. You can feel the buzz in the air in this modern stadium with the game already in full swing. It's loud, with fans cheering and chatting, the kind of noise that gets your heart racing. Then my eyes catches something totally different from all this modern flashiness. There's a part of the circle stands missing, and instead there are 2 older buildings, the original Members Pavilion and the slightly newer Ladies Pavilion. These buildings don't look like the rest of the stadium at all. They've got this old classy look with fancy designs and a green roof that looks like something from an old movie. The bigger of the 2 buildings is also the oldest. It's got this grand, classic feel to it. Imagine a large, elegant building with lots of windows. Inside, it's all about dark wooden benches and green fields out of every window. Makes you feel like you're stepping into the heart of cricket history. This is the Members Pavilion, and sitting next to it is the Ladies Pavilion that shares that old world charm, but with its own twist. It's a bit smaller and has a more delicate look with beautiful ironworks that makes it pretty as a picture. The roof is matching with its neighbor, and it's painted in colors that blend perfectly with the green on the ground. Inside it feels cozy and welcoming with a view that's just stunning. These old buildings are surrounded by all the new stuff, but it holds its own, filled with stories and history. I was invited here by my good friend Steve Ahern. He works at ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and we've known each other since 2009, when we both were speakers at a radio conference in Iran. As we arrived, I asked him to tell me a bit more about where we are.
Yeah, sure. We're standing in the members area of the Sydney Cricket Ground, and we're looking at the Members Pavilion and the Ladies Pavilion, the two oldest stands of the Sydney Cricket Ground. They date back more than 100 years, which is old for Australia, a new country. And like Lord's Cricket Ground in London, they're known as the Holy Grail, the special place for sports lovers. They were the first stands. Of course, they're superseded now by very modern stands all around the rest of the stadium. But for lovers of the game and the history, this is the holy place to be.
The Sydney Cricket Ground is one of those places in Sydney that's not just a sport venue. It's a piece of history. So let's take a little look in the history book.
Let's look in the history book.
The Sydney Cricket Ground started its journey way back in 1848. Yes, you heard that right. It's been around for more than 175 years. Back then, it was just a simple field for British soldiers to play some cricket. But like a small tree that grew into a massive one, it grew bigger and better. By 1878, they decided it was time for an upgrade. So they built the first grandstand. Imagine sitting here watching a game in the 1800s with none of the modern tech we have today. No big jumbo screens, no replays, just the game and the crowd. Fast forward to now, and the SCG is a mighty place that can seat around 48,000 people. Inside the Members Pavilion, I'm hit by a cool vibe. It's not about the shiny and the new. It's about wood, history, and a touch of elegance. You get this feeling that you're part of something special, a club that's seen it all from epic wins to heartbreaking losses.
So that's why the members area is here.
Exactly right, yes. So members can come into these two stands and one more on the other side. Everybody else who just pays for a ticket, they get into the modern stands, which, by the way, usually have better facilities and better seats, but, you know, you put up with the old things.
You want to be in the Holy Grail.
Exactly. Yeah. You put up with the old things just for the magic of it.
Over the years, the Holy Grail has undergone renovations and updates to maintain their charm while providing modern amenities, but still they retain the historical essence that distinguishes this section from the newer part of the stadium.
So I'm going to take you for a walk at the back of the ladies and the members stand, and we're going to go through the Walk of Honour and visit some statues here. There's Richie Benaud, the famous Richie Benaud here, with a pink bandana, because this is known as the pink test, where there's an appeal for cancer, and so he's got a pink bandana on
a couple of statues here. They got the bandana around their neck.
Exactly. Yep.
Like a little scarf. Yeah.
And so Richie was a very well-known cricketer in the 1960s and became an even more famous commentator on radio and television. And as we're walking, you can hear it's a windy day. That's going to play havoc with the ball here today.
Okay.
We're facing the Members Pavilion, and we're looking at a statue of Steve Waugh. Raised his bat and his baggy green cap. They call it a baggy green. He's got his cricket pads on his legs to save getting hit and bruised and broken bones by balls. And that's a famous Steve Waugh pose when he got 100 in one of the tests. He was another one of Australia's famous cricket captains.
Steve mentioned Richie Benaud when we passed his statue. And as he said, he wasn't just a cricketer. He was an icon of the sport, both on and off the field. He transformed from an effective all-rounder for the Australian cricket team into one of the most respected cricket commentators globally. Richie's career on the pitch was impressive as a charismatic captain of the Australian national team, but it was behind the microphone where he truly left a permanent mark on the game. His commentary was known for its mellow, understated style, insightful, concise, and gentle, manly manner, embodying the spirit of cricket. He had a distinctive voice and a unique way of explaining the game's complexities, making it accessible and enjoyable for both hardcore fans and newcomers. Beyond his voice, his personal style was iconic. A preference for cream, bone, white, off-white and beige attire became his trademark, something that went well with his grey hair. As I was approaching the stadium, I noticed a group of men looking exactly like that. All dressed in grey wigs, grey suits and holding oversized blow-up microphones. When I came inside, I saw a whole section of the stands with around 300 cricket supporters looking like the legend. This group, often referred to as the Richies, gather at cricket matches to celebrate Benaud's legacy. The Richies aim to capture Benaud's spirit and love for the game, bringing a sense of fun, respect and camaraderie to the stands. Richie Benaud passed away in 2015, but his legacy lives on, not just in the memories, but also in this joyful celebration by the fans who dress up like him. As I'm sure you get by now, cricket is something that's very important to the Australians.
In Australia, we have this saying that the captain of the Australian cricket team is more important than the Prime Minister. So, we change the Prime Ministers, but, we want to keep the captain of a winning side for a very long time.
The Members Pavilion is exclusively for members of the SCG Trust, who get some special perks and seats. So how did I get into the Members Pavilion, you might think? Because obviously I'm not a member. Those membership cards are something you can't just get from one day to the next. They're more or less handed down to the next generation. But my friend Steve is a member, and he was able to invite me as his guest, but only, he said with his right index finger lifted in the air, if I went out and got myself a nice white collar shirt.
That whole thing about a members pavilion, I know that you inherited your membership from your father?
Sort of. He put me in for membership when I was born and I got it when I was 10, and that's how long you have to wait. But in those days that was a long time. Now it's even more. So if you apply for membership now, probably you'd get a notification in the 2030s sometime that your application would soon be ready.
So you could put your money on people on Mars or a membership.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Members Pavilion and the Ladies Pavilion have got this classic look with their old-style architecture featuring ironworks, wooden seats and even those iconic gabled roofs. It's like they've frozen a piece of the past in the middle of this modern buzz of a stadium.
So I can see that's a new part over there. That looks very modern.
Exactly. The two old stands are here, and then we've walked round the back to a very modern new stand. That's the Noble stand. All of the stands, apart from these two old ones which are heritage listed, all of the other stands have been upgraded and demolished and renewed over the years, and this is one of the newest.
As we're making our way inside the Members Pavilion, let me remind you that this episode is supported in part by Hotels25.com. Here you don't need a membership card. Anyone can get the best prices on a place to stay if you're going traveling. It compares prices from all the biggest and best search sites and bring you a list of the different prices of the exact same room, and then it's up to you where to book it. And as something new, you can also find great deals on flights. If you use it, you get the best deals, and I get a small commission that you don't pay for. This makes it possible for me to bring you more episodes like this one, so it's a win-win for both of us. It's Hotels25.com.
The play is in progress, so most people are sitting outside watching the game, but we're just walking through the coffee shop area at the back of the member stand. And now I'm going to take you up the steps, and we're going to turn right, and we're going to walk through the bar area. This is not many people here drinking coffee, but when we go to the bar, it'll be very hard to push through because there's always a lot of people drinking their beer. I mean, it's 11 o'clock now. Play's been going for 90 minutes. If you haven't had a beer yet, there's something wrong. That's the tradition.
And we're talking 11 in the morning. So
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You might be wondering, why are we walking around when the game has already been going on for 90 minutes? And by the way, this is an important match with the national team from Australia playing against South Africa. Well, those 90 minutes, that's just today. A match like this goes on for 5 days.
And you can see we've just come into the main area. On our left is the away dressing room, so the South Africans team is there. And then on the right, on the other side of this bar, is the Australian dressing room. And we're going to push our way through the bar now.
A match going on for 5 days was something I did not know. In fact, there's a lot I don't know about cricket. It's so funny, a few days earlier I was having lunch with Steve, his wife, and a couple of their friends, and we started talking about cricket. And I casually asked, how long is a game? They said 5 days, and honest to God, I thought they were joking. Like saying, it feels like 5 days because it's so boring. But I was the only one laughing. And then I realized that it was actually true. It goes on for 5 days.
So there we pushed our way through, and you could see that many people have on their second or third beer by now, but all facing the cricket pitch and watching the game while talking about, I'm sure they're talking about the game, but who knows how legible they are, how understandable they are after having their first beer at 9:30 in the morning. And all around this ancient bar, known as the Long Bar there, the mahogany wood bar stretches the length of it. There are banners and pictures of the famous cricket players in Australia.
To be fair, there are shorter games. One Day International, completed in 1 day, and 2020, that's completed in only 3 to 4 hours.
We're going to go out of the member stand to the ladies' stand now.
Okay.
What we're watching is what's called Test cricket. It's the longest form of cricket, played over 5 days. Each day is typically 3 sessions of 2 hours each. And again, I kid you not, with breaks for lunch and tea. So in total about 6 hours of play per day. Test cricket is considered the game's highest standard, testing teams' endurance, skills and strategy over longer periods.
Now we're in the ladies' stand, and we're just going to stand.
Why is it called
here.
the ladies' stand?
Ah,
I see
yes.
other things than ladies here.
Yes, true. Because in the old sexist days of the past, members were only men. They were the only ones allowed to have the membership.
Back in the good old days.
In the good old days, exactly. And then it was only men who could go in the members' stand, and next to it was the ladies' stand where ladies and children could come.
Yeah.
And of course that changed quite some decades ago now, as it should have. But interestingly, you'll look in the members' stand and you'll see that it's mostly still men, because they go there to talk about the cricket and, as we experience, perhaps to drink a little beer, whereas in this stand there's still beer here, but there's more parents, grandparents and kids, and so it's a different kind of an atmosphere. Yeah. And we're standing here because another tradition is that you never walk in front of people who are watching the game until the over is finished. And so the over has now finished. They're resetting the field, and we should be able to go and find a seat. Mm-hmm.
Over the years, it's not just cricket that's been played here at the Sydney Cricket Grounds. Also rugby, Australian rules football, and even concerts with artists like Elton John, Madonna, Michael Jackson, the Rolling Stones, and U2 have filled this place with cheers and music.
A few years ago when I was in Toronto, I was invited by a good friend of mine. His name is Steve. I know him from the radio industry. We met at radio conferences around the world, and he invited me to a baseball game. I know nothing about baseball, And here I am again, a few years later. I'm in Sydney, and I've been invited by a guy called Steve that I know from the radio industry. We met at radio conferences around the world, to a cricket game, and I know nothing about cricket.
I think there's a theme there.
There's a theme here. So
now, if you're listening and your name is Steve and Pele turns up in your
if you work in the radio industry,
you work in radio, and invite him to a sports match
that I know nothing about.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I was in Toronto, I YouTubed a lot of videos about the rules of baseball, and that history repeated itself last night. I took a crash course of cricket, and still I don't really know much about it.
It's kind of complex. Let me explain it for you. We're watching a field with about 14 people on it and a couple of umpires. We're looking at two sets of stumps on either end of the pitch in the middle.
So it's three sticks in the ground,
yes.
and
two pieces of wood called bales over the top.
Yeah, right.
And the objective is that the batting team defends the stumps, and the bowling team, who is bowling and fielding, tries to get the person out by either bowling the ball past their defensive bat and hitting those stumps, or by forcing or tricking the player to hit a ball which can then be caught or run out. So that's the objective of the game. And, of course, it's a 5-day match, which anyone who you would have learnt in baseball, that game goes for a few hours. This game goes for 5 days, full day.
Yeah, because when we met a couple of days ago, I said, well, I know that the games are long. How long are they? And you and your friend said, well, it's 5 days. And I thought, okay, there's going to be a roaring laughter, but you were serious.
Yes, that's right.
It's 5 days.
That's exactly how it works. For a test match, there are other kinds of matches, but for a test match, we start around about 10 o'clock in the morning and play till around about 6 o'clock at night. It breaks for drinks and lunch and afternoon tea, but basically we
That's
play
just
for the
how
whole
British
time.
it is. Afternoon tea.
Absolutely. The tea break as well. But then the rest of the time we're on the field, and the objective is to get the batting team out, and then you bat, and if you get more points than them, then you win. But it's more complex than that, but that's the simple version.
Yeah. And this is day 4 of your match against South Africa.
Actually, it's day 2 of the match
day 2.
against
I thought
South Africa.
It's Thursday.
Yeah.
I thought, okay.
Yep. Started yesterday, and you're here on the second day.
Okay.
It will go for 3 more days. If it does go for that time, there could be rain, or we could get them out. They've been a fairly weak batting side this series.
So if you win 3 days in a row, it's over.
Yeah, sort of. If you get them
Let's
out
just say
twice.
that, fella.
Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. Yep, that's fine. Then I'd have to start going into the complexity of the rules. So, you could hit pause and I'd be still talking in an hour's time.
But we just heard. And now they're running back and forth, so they don't run around a square like they do in baseball. They run back and forth.
Exactly, that's the difference. So you can score points in cricket in a few different ways. Like baseball, you can get runs, but as you said, we run back and forth because there's 2 batters and they run. Each run of wickets is 1 point, and you can also score by giving a big hit to the boundary and hitting 4, or hitting it over the boundary without bouncing and getting 6 runs.
Mm-hmm. And this is called a test match. That's the 5-day thing. And go figure why it's called a test match, because... Yeah, I don't get it. Yeah. Well, we're just testing who's going to be the strongest side. That's you're not just testing; you're finding out.
Exactly, but it's a very British, old-fashioned way of saying it. We'll test your mettle.
Yeah.
If you're interested in hearing the episode from when I was with Canadian Steve to my first ever Major League Baseball game, you can find that in your podcast app. And on the radiovagabond.com, I put a link to the post for it.
It's the second biggest sport in the world after soccer. I heard that yesterday, and that blew me away. But India has a lot to say about that.
Yeah, that's right. Because the game began in Britain, and a couple of centuries ago, Britain was a big colonial power that dominated a lot of the world, especially throughout Asia and here in Australia, New Zealand and other places which were British colonies. So the British brought this tradition of cricket to all those places. Some countries, when they got independence, rejected the tradition because they just wanted to throw off all the old colonial things. Others adopted it, here in Australia and very much India, and then our way of getting revenge on the old colonial masters was to get better at the game than them and to win the test matches against Britain.
Yeah, that is the one that you want to win.
Yeah, exactly. That's a grudge match. And when Australia plays Britain, it's known as the Ashes Test Series, and that comes from the tradition of the first significant test match where the Australians came over to England and played at Lord's, and the English were used to beating all their weak colonial teams, but in that test match more than a century ago, the Australians thrashed the British, and so a woman, a cricket lover, thought that this was terrible, and to commemorate the tragic loss of form of the British, she burnt a wooden cricket stump and put it in a little urn like you would give the ashes of a person who's died, and she presented it to the players, the ashes of the great body of the great English team. It's now dead, and so each series, called the Ashes series, where Australia plays New Zealand, they play for the honour of either keeping the Ashes or the British winning it back.
And that urn that she gave is still there.
It's still there. It's a very tiny little thing. You could hold it in your palm. It's still there. And why you're hearing cheering like this is that I think it's a 4 or a 6. Yes, a 6. The umpire held up both hands. That means that the shot went over the boundary without bouncing, and so it was a great hit by the Australians. It was bowled by Maharaj and played by Steve Smith, the Australian batter, scoring 6 runs. A great triumph shot for the Australians, who are now 2 out for 214 runs. Oh, and another big hit. So this is... You're here. We're here at a great moment in the match because Australia's getting pretty confident now. They've got 8 more players to go, and the 2 players have got pretty good scores. Khawaja's got 80 and Steve Smith is in his 30s, and it's already day 2. So I think the Australians have decided, well, we've got a pretty strong score. We're going to just hit. If we get out, that's okay. We've got more players who can come in and make more runs. So I think in this session, before lunch, 45 minutes to go, we're going to see some big hits. And this guy bowling is a spinner, Maharaj. When the Australians were facing the fast bowlers before, it was harder to score big hits, but a spin bowler bowls slower and you can bash them and get big scores, like again this one could go to the boundary for 4, but no, it was stopped on the way. But there's the tension in the crowd thinking this is what we want to see. We want to see big hits. But of course the more you hit like that, the more chance you have of getting out. So that's also the thrill of the game.
I think that I'm noticing because when I was at the baseball match in Toronto, it was also a big production. We have a big jumbo screen here that tells us a lot. But there was also a stadium announcer there. And I got to speak to him after. It was a friend of Steve's. So I don't know if you know any stadium announcers, but I don't hear any here.
No, and that's also a very different thing. Cricket, the traditional game, you wouldn't want too much of that hype. You know, we think of it like American baseball hype. We would not want that.
Oh, that's
music and
they're not as sophisticated over there.
Exactly. You know, we
This is a
consider
gentleman's sport.
Yeah, exactly right. We consider that we know what's going on, and you know, everybody knows.
So you don't have cheerleaders?
No, none of that nonsense for a test match. No, that's very un-test match.
No.
I must say in the shorter games there is elements of all of that to make it much more spectacular. But as I was saying, this is the traditional old-style test match.
And I guess nobody's running on the field with fireworks. And no.
Oh, no, we wouldn't have that nonsense. Yeah.
Rubbish.
Yes, exactly.
It's a very different sport than anything I've ever seen. For example, there was one of the players that, in between plays, turned around and ran 30 meters out to some spectators and signed a few autographs, and then ran back to his spot on the field. That's not something I've seen in any other sport. On my right, there's a whole section of the Richies. I said 300 before, but there might even have been 500 or more men, all in grey suits, grey wigs, and all of them swinging a blow-up microphone over their heads as they were cheering.
What just happened here?
Yeah, the reason for all this crazy cheering is that Khawaja, the second batter for Australia, just scored 100 runs, and so we've been seeing a lot of big hits over the last few overs, and that one made him score 100.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Aussies love that.
Okay, yeah. And he was... he went crazy, yeah.
Yeah. It's actually been a very fast-scoring few overs, and the way that it makes it an entertaining game. In a game like this that could last for 5 days, you do get some very slow parts where the strategy is to not score and not risk getting out. But at the moment, Australia has a good, strong lead, and they can afford to just hit. And if they get out, well, that's okay. They've got more players left to come.
Test matches between Australia and South Africa have historically been contests of high skills, both teams boasting strong batters and bowling lineups. Matches between them are eagerly anticipated by fans for the quality of cricket displayed and the rivalry that has developed over the years.
So we've now left our seats at the front, and we're just waiting for the bowler to bowl, because there's a tradition of not passing in front of the crowd while they're playing a shot. And he's walking back to his start of his runoff. He'll run again, and the batsman will play the shot. And then after that, as we went through this visit to the cricket ground, we went through the bar, we saw people drinking. I told you that people had started drinking at the beginning of the day at 9:30, their first beer. So the only appropriate way to finish your tour is to take you to the bar and buy you a beer.
Yeah, now it's afternoon, so
yes, it's okay now.
It's okay,
it's acceptable.
Now. We're not morning drinkers.
Exactly. And it's about 20 past 12. Lunch will happen in about 10 minutes. And that's what we're going to do, is pretty much what everybody will do in the lunch break. They will adjourn to the bars and they'll have a few quick beers, and then they may or may not resume their seats afterwards to watch the rest of the day's game. And because today is quite cold and windy and overcast, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some rain in the afternoon. But so far we've seen a very good morning's cricket with Australia very strong. On the second day, we've seen a lot of big hits, and the two batsmen in, Smith and Khawaja, have both got really big scores.
So I take it not a lot of the spectators will be here for every second of the game.
Yeah, people come and go. If you're working, you would often just come for a spell, one of the sessions, and then you might go back to the office. But it's also holiday time here in Australia, so you can see in front of us a lot of families, and they would probably come all day, and they may choose which day to come on. I mean, some lovers of cricket will come every day, but others will just pick the day that suits them and the day they think might be the most interesting. And certainly today has been a very interesting day for Australians, because we've had some big hits and it's been pretty spectacular play. If you were a South African, today would not be considered a good day for you, because the Australians are getting a big score and the South Africans are not getting us out.
You can see pictures, videos, and links and read much more on theradiovagabond.com.
And then we went for a beer and a hot dog in the bar that was full of mostly men, all impeccably dressed in white shirts, like me. The bar is crowded and quite loud.
I just quite like the vibe in a place like this. And everybody really will be talking about the cricket here. Of course, they've spent the morning. It's 12:30 now. In this bar in the top of the members' stand, people have been probably having a beer since 9:30 in the morning. So they might have had a few by 3 hours, but they will be talking about the cricket. They'll be analysing every ball. They'll be saying, did Smith play better this test than the others?
And I can't help looking, there's a sign there where it says non-alcohol seating.
Yes, that's right. That's a very small section of the rest of the stand. But there apparently are people who don't like to have a drink, so I don't know really. I can't understand it, but apparently there are people like that.
After you leave, I'm going back in here.
Yeah, right, okay.
Up until now, we've only been in the older part of the stadium, but Steve thought that I should see the new part too. And it was like stepping into the future.
So you can see we're going up the escalators now in what's known as the Noble Stand, which was one of the new stands here at Cricket Ground.
This is really coming from something old and classic. Now we're
that's right. It feels like you've come 100 years into the future. Yeah.
Just a few steps and then we're in the future.
And you see there's police around, as there would be in any big event, but our police are just hanging around having a chat and very relaxed. Yeah. So this is Australia.
Yeah.
So here we are in the modern section. You might notice the theme continues. People are drinking beer, but just in a more modern area under the modern stands. With some dining options and drinking options. So this is much more like you would find probably when you went to the baseball stadium in America.
Or modern football stadium in Denmark.
But in a way, because it's the same as anywhere in the world, it's lost the charm. So
it had a lot more charm there.
Yeah.
It's nice, modern, beautiful architecture, very spacious, but it doesn't have the charm of that building next door.
That's right.
In short, the Sydney Cricket Ground isn't just about sports. It's about stories, memories, and a connection to the past. It's a place where new tales are made every time a game is played, adding to its rich history. Heading out of the Sydney cricket ground when the players went for afternoon tea and scones, I run into some Richies and stopped them to see if I could borrow one of their wigs for a photo.
I see 200-300 people with all grey hair, similar suits, and a big blow-up microphone.
Richie Benaud?
What's the deal? How many are you? Are you a society?
No. Like, we're not a society. You just sign up and you pay to join the Richies to come across.
This great man,
Yeah,
Richie Benaud.
So he used to be a cricket announcer on TV.
Yeah, commentator.
Commentator. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an icon in Australia.
Yeah.
We love him for what he's done for our.
Yeah.
You can read his stats out if you want.
63 tests. So those games here, I don't know anything about cricket.
48 wickets he took.
What is a wicket?
That's when you get out. Like he's bowling. 2,201 runs. His highest score was 122. That is actually fucked. That his highest score was 122. He had a bit of a unique voice.
Yeah.
So when he said two, like it was 2 for 222 off too many overs. That's what he used to say.
Okay.
His mannerisms were special. Yeah.
You can see me with grey hair on the blog post for this episode. So, do I know more about the culture and the rules of cricket, the world's second most watched sport? The culture for sure, and I have a better understanding why so many people love it. The rules? Not so much. I found it fascinating, and a big thanks to Steve for inviting me and explaining this gentleman's sport. So, Steve number 1 in Canada introduced me to baseball, Steve number 2 in Australia to cricket. Now I'm just waiting for other Steves to take me to other sporting events I know nothing about. I actually already have found a potential Steve number 3. He's from South Africa and is a huge fan of rugby, so that might be something I should do. I'll be back next Travel Tuesday with another adventure, but before that we have a flashback episode on Friday, and in the weekend another Vagabond short. That's also available as a video on YouTube and Facebook. That one is with my suggestions for a week-long road trip up the Pacific Coast Highway in California. All with tips on what to see and where to stay. Make sure you don't miss that one. My name is Palabo, and I gotta keep moving. See ya.
Radio Vagabond. Produced by RadioGuru.co.uk.